Assalamualaikum and very good day to all. So we continue our lecture for today. I will give you a lecture 12 and 13. So lecture ni kita ganti yang you all hari Wesak hari tu, dan apa yang kita ada special issue lecture tu kan, invited lecturer tu. So yang last week tu saya ganti dengan acing class untuk lecture 12 dan 13. So for today we will learn about the monitoring and reviewing the risk measures. Lebih kurang juga sama, kita akan discuss juga pasal risk, hazard and danger juga. So ada yang saya redundant, akan slide yang redundant, benda yang sama. Just saya nak highlight je yang last week punya slide. Okay, risk identification. What is the risk identification? Actually, risk identification is a process of identifying and assessing threats to a organization, its operations and its workplace. For example, risk identification may include assessing IT security threats such as what we have, virus tu kan, malware or ransomware, or accidents, natural disaster and other potentially harmful event that could disrupt business operation. Depends on the company lah. Kalau you all punya workplace, you all punya lab, you all punya tempat study, lecture hall, semua tu lah. So company that develop robust risk management plans are likely to find they are able to minimize the impact of threats when and if they should occur. Okay, next we go to the definitions of the risk, danger and hazard. So risk is a combination of the probability that a particular outcome will occur and the severity of the harm involved, which is kombinasi kemungkinan berlakunya kejadian berbahaya atau kemalangan dan kesan akibatnya. Itulah risiko. So chance or probability of danger, loss of injury occurring, or a measure of economic loss or human injury in terms of both the accident. And then it's also a combination of incidents, probability and consequently. Senang ayat dia ialah kombinasi segala kemungkinan keadaan yang membawa kepada berbahaya. So membahaya is a danger. Danger defined as the relative exposure to hazard. A hazard may present but there may be a little danger because of the precaution taken. So apa pula hazard? Hazard is any source of potential damage, harm or adverse health effect of something or someone, which is risk is the chance that a hazard will cause harm. Hazard identification process involve identifying both existing and potential workplace hazard, assessing the risk, determining and implementing the control and reviewing hazard. So in Malay, hazard which is sesuatu punca atau sesuatu keadaan yang mempunyai potensi. Dia tak berbahaya lagi, cuma ia mempunyai potensi berbahaya di mana ia boleh mendatangkan kemudaratan dalam bentuk kecederaan atau kesihatan yang buruk kepada pekerja, kepada manusia, kerosakan harta, kerosakan alam sekitar dan gabungan dari mana-mana kesan negatif ini. Okay, we go to risk management. Risk management is the process of identifying, assessing and prioritization of risk, followed by coordinated and economical application to resources, which is to minimize, monitor or control the probability and or impact of unfortunate event or to maximize the realization of opportunities. These risks stem from a variety of sources including financial uncertainties, legal liabilities, technology issues, and then strategic management problem, accident or natural disaster. Risk control measures are action taken to eliminate or to prevent or to reduce the occurrence of a hazard that you are being identified. By adopting risk control measures, you are aiming to reduce the risk to health and safety so far as is reasonable, practicable. Okay, next is identifying types of hazards and various route of entry. So employers have the legal responsibility to identify and control to the best of their ability workplace hazard in order to protect workers. Likewise, workers have the right to know about the hazard of the job and how to protect themselves, and the responsibilities to follow company rules that outline the hazard control processes. It is the responsibility of all workers to understand what a hazard is, what the risk is, and then how the hazard can affect people, property, and the environment, and how to prevent injury or illness from the hazard. There are some issues in managing of health at workplace, such as difficult to develop strategy due to the long latency period or individual susceptibility factor. The difficulty are experienced by designers, which is difficult in taking account of health risk in their specification. And then we go to manager, which is determining the level of health protection that personnel require. Inside of operative, being aware of health risk and the system, whether control or prevention, that are put in place to protect them. There are about 6 types of basic hazards, which is categorized into 6. First is physical hazard, chemical hazard, biological hazard, electrical hazard, radiation hazard, and physiological hazard. Kita akan pergi satu-satu lah nanti. Physical hazard, which is substances or activities that threaten your physical safety. They are the most common and are present in most workplace at one time or another. These include unsafe condition that can cause injury, illness, and death. The example of physical hazards such as height, force, noise or vibration, lighting, and etc. So the long-term effect of the physical hazards such as tissue damage, hearing loss, lifting, manual handling, ergonomic, traffic hazard, or you can collapse. So how to we prevent physically the hazard? So the main the normal, the common answer is to reduce noises, reduce vibration present in the workplace, improve working condition, place barriers between employees and physical hazards such as radiation or microwave,
microwave rain. And then we can provide proper ventilation and air conditioning for employees. And then what's more, we can insulate any surface that could be prone to extreme in temperature. The common physical hazard such as manual handling, angkat barang secara manual tu lah, berat-berat. So the lifting and carrying of loads is a big problem in every industry. Manual handling injuries contribute about 25%, tinggi juga tu, 25% of all work related injuries. So how to reduce the effect? So kita boleh bag material must be less than 25 kg. Tapi even kita limit to less than 25 kg, bila diorang rasa ringan, diorang akan bawa 2-3 bag materials tu kan. Jadi benda yang sama akan berlaku. And then we can, a part of the weight factor, other factor also affect this manual handling, which is related accident, such as for individual, age, gender, training, experience, previous injury, or the overall operation. So kita kena counter jugalah angkat barang ni bergantung kepada umur dia, perempuan ke lelaki nak angkat benda berat-berat, perempuan berapa kilo maksimum dia. So kadang-kadang kena tengok juga experience dia. Takkan baru-baru masuk kerja kita selalu angkat barang berat, dia tak biasa kan. So semua ni kita kena counter lah untuk reduce risk for in any type of accident. Okey, apa kesan physical hazard ni kepada tubuh badan kita? Dia ada satu term which is WRULD, which is work related upper limb disorder, which is WRULD ni caused by repetitive movement disease associated, which is aches, pains, tension, and disorder involving any part of the arm from fingers to shoulder or the neck. So this WRULD include problem with the soft tissues, muscles, tendons, and ligaments, along with the circulatory and nerve supply to the limb. There are factors associated with the development of work-related upper limb disorder, such as resisting excessive force, frequency and duration of movement, posture, which is akan mengganggu kita punya ergonomic of bodies, work organization, or physicosomatic factor, which is illness due to the interaction of the mind and the body. Okay, the next example of the physical hazard is noise. Noise is the one of the most common workplace health hazard in heavy industrial and manufacturing environments, as well as in farm, cafeterias. Permanent hearing loss is the main health concern. What we call stress and interference with speech communication are the main concern in noisy office, school, or computer room. It can cause hearing loss, which is factor influencing hearing loss, intensity of the noise, frequency, length of exposure, individual tolerance. So this factor is also affected by other factors such as age or effect of drug, if we take a drug. So this figure show the level, sound level in dB, which is we can categorize in harmful, critical, or safe. So the sources is for example for harmful,
jet engine, riveting hammer, of critical. We have sound from the propeller, aircraft, rod drill, or heavy vehicle, okay, etc. So, what the difference between sound and noise? Actually, sound is the what we hear, and then meanwhile for noise is unwanted sound. The difference between sound and noise depends upon the listener and the circumstance. Contohnya rock music kan, certain orang rasa sound tu bagus je, dia dengar lagi lah, dia lagi bersemangat semua tu. Tapi certain people tak boleh dengar lagu rock. Macam saya sendiri pun for rock music saya tak boleh dengar, dia macam satu very annoying, very noise bagi saya lah. So rock music can be pleasurable sound to one person and annoying noise to another. In either case, it can be hazardous to a person hearing if the sound is loud and if they are exposed long and often enough. How to control noise hazard? So to prevent or to control adverse outcome of noise exposure, or noise level should be reduced to acceptable levels. The best method of noise reduction is to use engineering modification to the noise sources itself or to the workplace environment. Whereas technology cannot adequately control the problem, personal hearing protection such as earmuff or earplugs can be used. Personal protection, however, should be considered as an interim measure, while other means of reducing workplace noise are being explored and implemented. Okay, the next hazard is vibration. So vibration will result in tissue damage. There are two kind of vibration, whole body vibration, which is from the vehicles, or segmental vibration from the pneumatic handheld tools. So what are the hazard of vibration in construction site? So in vibration is transmitted into your hand and arms when you using handheld or operated tools and machinery. Excessive exposure can affect the nerve, blood vessel, muscle and joint of the hand, wrist and arm, causing hand-arm vibration syndrome, or we call it as HAVS, hand-arm vibration syndrome. So in short term exposure to vibration hazard may cause tingling and numbness in finger and hand. So dia akan rasa kebas-kebas pada jari dengan tangan you. And then for the long term exposure to hand arm vibration, it can cause a damage the finger and hand, damage in especially painful when hands are cold. In severe cases, the person may not be able to continue using sesetengah tools lah dalam tempat kerja dia. Here the example of physical hazard, which is combination physical hazard and physiological hazard. Okay, from here, example of electronic assembly workers. So they have a eye problem from doing close work, especially in poor light, and then for long period with inadequate seating can suffer from back and other musculoskeletal problem. And then next example is when we use in solder company or solder electronic assembly, mesti deal dengan solder. So solder fumes or solder flakes in the eyes when the excess solder is cut off with pliers. So combination ni semua ni dia akan membawa kepada satu lagi stress, iaitu psychological hazard, which is workers are likely to expose to a combination of work related social hazard and risk factor. This include stress, fatigue, bullying, violence, aggression, harassment, and burnout, which can be harmful to the health of workers and compromise their well-being. Okay, semua yang saya cerita tadi tu cerita dalam physical hazard. Okay, next we go to chemical hazard. Chemical hazard. Every workplace mesti ada chemicals ranging from cleaning product to scale chemical production. Even yang cleaner guna untuk cuci toilet ke semua tu pun salah satu chemical. So every workplace mesti ada chemicals. If chemicals are not used, stored and handheld properly, so they if not, they can cause injury or illness, disease, fire, explosion, or property damage. So know the hazard of chemical and appropriate precautions to take to work safely and avoid injuries. The example of chemical hazards such as gas, liquid, vapor, fume, mist, dust, asbestos, lead, PB. So the root dia, inhalation, kesan dia, skin contact with chemical, ingestion of chemical. So chemical hazard should be addressed instead in the production process, which is storage. During use, we have to have cleaning agents or sanitizer. Prior to the ingredient and packaging material of the materials during processing and prior to the shipment of product. Routes of entry of toxic agents, which is respiratory, skin and eyes contact, mouth ingestion or injection. So for health hazard, in chemical hazard, where workers and other personnel are exposed to hazardous chemical through inhalation or absorption through the skin or injection and swallowing. So chemical hazard can be acute, which is vomiting or acid burn, what we call asphyxiation, which happen immediately, or chronic disease, which is will be affected, such as in dermatitis, asthma, liver damage, or cancer, which develop after prolonged exposure. This figure show how chemical hazard yang mana kita bernafas, kita sedut semua boleh mengganggu our respiratory system, iaitu macam mana dia boleh berlaku kerosakan pada paru-paru, pada kulit, even pada kita punya perut, pada kita punya stomach semua tu kan. Okay, semua ni disebabkan oleh chemical hazard. Generally, they have two type of effect of chemical hazard, which is acute and chronic. Acute, which is a lot of exposure to the chemical hazard, the reaction happen in short period of time. And then when we go to chronic effect, so repeated small exposure, long period of time. Common type of toxic effect, which is irritation, dia akan bawa kepada efek kepada kita punya paru-paru, pada skin, chemical, physical and mechanical or biological. And then dia akan bawa efek kepada central nervous system, CNS, depression. So dia akan bawa kita headache, ataupun kita jadi drowsiness, or yang lebih kritikal lagi, dia akan membawa kepada unconsciousness. So dia akan organ affected, yang paling penting brain lah. Kalau brain tu dah tak boleh rosak, ada memberi kesan, yang ni yang akan control semua kita punya lung semua tu kan. Okay, so many solvent kita biasa dengar, toluene, xylene, ether, aseton ni pun bahaya juga. Even kalau kita kegunaan biasa, dia just hazard saja. Tapi kalau kita terkena terlalu banyak ataupun kita bau dia terlalu lama, dia pun akan membawa kepada danger juga, which is produce this effect if the vapor concentration is high. Another type of toxic effect, which is asphyxia. So which is interfere with the transfer of oxygen, yang menyebabkan kita punya bloodstream cannot supply enough oxygen, and then the oxygen level will drop of 21% drop to 16%. Same case with the symptom of COVID-19, right? So the sources is gas from the sewerage, argon, propane, methane, carbon monoxide or hydrogen sulfide or hydrogen cyanide. Biasanya hydrogen cyanide ni kita buang guna dalam pelombongan biji emas kan. Okay, next is cancer. So, biasanya untuk cancer ni kesan dia kita tak nampak dalam masa yang sekejap lah. Bila kita terekspos kepada chemical hazard ni. The effect is about 20 to 30 years. So, the source is mostly from the chemicals. Next is pneumoconiosis. Okay, then mengganggu juga reproductive effect. Terutamanya lelaki pun dia mengganggu untuk reproductive ni, perempuan pun dia mengganggu, which is cause the ability to reproduce and fetal development. Dia akan mengganggu kita punya janin ataupun mengganggu reproductive organ lah. Okay, such as mercury ataupun PCBs, lead, and then estrogen and some pesticide. Another chemicals that affected to our organ, which is cadmium or mercury, Hg tu kan. So which is this is a systemic poison, which is will affect a whole body or at least a multiple of our organ. Another factor affecting toxic effect, which is a factor related to the agent such as chemical composition, physical properties or solubility in our body fluid, and then factor related to the exposure situation, which is how much and how long you expose the chemical hazard ni. So and then there is also a cofactors which is present or other materials yang ada dia combination and then react dekat kita punya situation. Then factor related to the individuals, which is individual difference, genetic status and allergic status, age, present or predisposing disease. Ni maksudnya berlainan dia punya allergic dia. Kadang-kadang ada orang terkena chemical kat kulit dia tak ada apa-apa, setengah orang terkena sikit je terus merebak, terus luka tu kurang susah nak sembuh semua. Dan kadang-kadang benda ni dia punya effect of chemical hazard ni bergantung juga kepada umur dengan penyakit-penyakit yang sedia ada kan. Jadi bila terkena tu dia akan jadi lebih teruk. Okay, here the list of the construction materials which is causing the occupational disease, which is affected to our skin, respiratory tract, lung, our eyes and nervous system. Nanti you all boleh bacalah nanti. Okay, for construction materials yang causing occupational disease, dulu kita asbestos ni dulu kita guna dekat membuat ceiling. Lepas tu kalau kita nak buat construction, nak buat pelapik semua tu, kita guna asbestos lah compare to kita guna plywood. Sebab plywood kan, sebab asbestos ni dia lagi murah, lagi senang. Lepas tu bila dah konkrit tu dah keras, kita boleh pecahkan terus asbestos tu. Tetapi sekarang ni saya rasa dalam 10 tahun yang lepas lagi, kerajaan kita, our government dah kurangkan penggunaan asbestos ni sebab dia membawa banyak kesan negatif kepada environment, kepada kesihatan kita. It can cause lung cancer. So the disease develop 20 to 40 years after exposure. The problem is ada asbestos in construction, which is many construction contract are being awarded without the contractor being informed of the presence of the asbestos materials. So how to prevent the chemical hazard? Okay, the most thing is by identification, which is hazard is related to the chemical materials, right? So the key element of the system are cautionary labeling of container of workplace hazardous material information system, which is control product. So the provision of material safety data sheets MSDS, biasanya kamu ada dengar kan pasal MSDS ni. Kalau setiap kamu punya tag, aku punya apa yang mati makanan ke apa, dia akan letak dekat situ MSDS kan. So at the same time, ia adalah satu workers education and training program. So kalau kita tengok dekat gambar ni, dia cakap dia nak makan kek, tapi dia cakap but it's such a sweet smelling poison kat sini kan. Walaupun kita dah tahu, let's say lah carbonated drink tu kan banyak gula semua, Coke, Pepsi semua tu, tapi walaupun kita dah labeling semua tu, still kita nak minum benda tu kan. Okay, benda paling dekat, walaupun kerajaan dah labelkan rokok tu ialah satu racun, tapi still you all nak isap lagi kan. Macam itulah contoh dia. Walaupun kita dah identify, dah letak labeling, tapi sebenarnya semua tu daripada our responsible. Okay, here the list of the symbol from the workplace hazardous material information system. Class E, toxic material. Class F, biohazardous, infective material. Class G, corrosive material. Class H is reactive material. Material safety data sheet MSDS is a document that contain information on the potential hazard, which is including of health, fire, reactivity and environmental, and how to work safely with the chemical product. It is an essential starting point for the development of a complete health and safety program. What is an MSDS? Which is provide the detailed information about the specific hazardous material. MSDS is prepared by a manufacturer or supplier of the materials. So an MSDS contain the following information about identity, physical hazard, health hazard, routes of body entry, permissible exposure limit, carcinogenic factor and safe handling procedure. Okey, sama dekat kotak rokok tu kan, dia ada tulis kan apa yang akan jadi kalau kamu smoking semua tu kan. Lepas tu akan bawa kepada kanser, akan bawa kepada yang tangan rosak, gigi rosak, mulut rosak tu kan. Sama je lah. Tu antara MSDS yang dibuat lah daripada kotak rokok tu. And then continue, what is an MSDS, which is data of ship preparation, control measures, which is emergency first aid procedures, contact information and special instruction. These MSDS ni sheet they tend to be general in nature since they provide summarized information which tries to address all reasonably anticipated uses of the material. The information of MSDS is organized into section. The specific name and the content of this section can vary from one supplier to another, but
often similar to the section of American Standard NC standard for MSDS preparation as yang dia orang dah list tu lah. So if kita tengok pada section of MSDS tu, the type of information may be in different order but under slightly different heading. Lebih kurang sama je untuk, biasanya saya ambil contoh yang kotak rokok tadi, untuk MSDS dia memang ayat dia lain, tapi the meaning tu lebih kurang sama je. Okay, faham? Okay, MSDS includes the information such as the properties of the each chemicals, the physical health and the environmental hazards, protective measures and safety precautions for handling or for storing and transporting the chemicals. This is the sample of the MSDS page for nitric acid 70%. The information from the MSDS is very useful when you want to run or want to use the chemicals, any chemicals. So kat sini contoh dia untuk nitric acid 70% concentration. When do you use an MSDS? Bila kita perlu baca dan perlu tahu pasal MSDS untuk setiap chemical yang kita guna. So you should use an MSDS whenever you need additional information about a hazardous material that is not included on the product label. For example, if you have spilled nitric acid on the floor and you need to know how to clean up safely, you need only refer to the safe handling procedure section of the nitric acid MSDS. Okay, here the safe handling procedure section of nitric acid 70%. So when have for small spill, just flush with water or neutralize with alkaline material, soda ash, lime or etc. So for larger spill and lot size, neutralize with alkaline, pick up with absorbent materials, and dispose in RCRA approved waste facility. Dia ada dah tong tu, RCRA approved tong tu. So the sewer then neutralize slurry with excess water if local ordinance allow. So nanti semua detail lah kamu boleh tahu cara nak bersihkan, cara nak guna melalui MSDS standard tadi kan. Some chemicals such as sodium hydroxide are very dangerous. If you have an accident, you may not have time to look up the information you need in MSDS kan. Bila dah tertumpah, terkena tangan semua ni, tak kena buka lagi manual kan. So you should read the MSDS for hazardous material present in your work area before you work with them. It's better prevent than cure. Macam saya cerita dengan last lecture saya tadi tu lah. So you all sebelum you all tahu dah benda tu ada hazard, you all kena baca dulu apa risiko dia, how to manage the risiko semua tu kan. So daripada situ baru you all boleh run benda yang ada high risk semua tu. Okay, kita dah belajar pasal physical hazard, chemical hazard. For the next hazard is biological hazard, which is living organism or once living organism, fungi, bacteria, virus, etc. So they can pose a threat to human health when they are inhaled, eaten or come in contact with skin. They can cause illness such as food poisoning or tetanus, respiratory infection or parasite infection. Biological hazard by microorganism such as fungi, bacteria or virus, which is in contact with bacteria through the improper treated. And then we have arthropods, which is from the mosquito or spiders.
bitten by the infected, such as mosquito. Then we have animal, plant allergen and toxin, protein allergen, which is from the food, urine, feces and hair. The next hazard is electrical hazard. For biological, electrical, radiation and psychological, I just sentuh roughly je lah kan. Sebabnya you all jarang facing for this hazard. Ya, biasanya you all akan facing for physical and chemical hazard yang regularly you akan facing kan. So for electrical hazard, according to OSHA, Organization of Safety and Health, which is an electrical hazard can be defined as a serious workplace hazard that expose workers to burn, electrocution, shock, arc flash, arc blast, masa welding to fire or explosion. By identifying this hazard and understanding how they happen, so we can take step to protect ourselves. Biasanya untuk kilang, dia memang dah ada untuk bila nak kurangkan, nak avoid electrical hazard ni, memang kita dah lantik someone yang competent to do electrical work. Sebab kilang kan dia guna voltage yang tinggi. So in this context, a competent person is someone who has the suitable training, skill and knowledge for the task to be undertaken to prevent injury to themselves and others. Successfully completed electrical apprenticeship with some post-apprenticeship experience is one way of demonstrating technical competence for general electrical work. More specialist work such as maintenance of high voltage switchgear or control system modification is almost certainly likely to require additional training and experience. Sebenarnya untuk high maintenance, high voltage switchgear ni memang ada lesen A, B, C semua ni. Kalau saya tahu untuk student-student electrical, memang dia orang akan ambil lesen-lesen ni lah. Dan dia akan bagi untuk consultation dekat company. Company akan bayar lah. Kalau dia orang boleh buat switchgear semua ni, untuk high voltage ke low voltage, dia orang akan bayar by monthly lah. Walaupun kerja dalam sebulan 3 hari je, dia orang akan dibayar monthly lah, berapa ribu. Next is radiation hazard from the UV light, laser, or other ray exposure. So exposure to very high level of radiation ray, such as being close to an atomic blast, can cause acute health effects such as skin burns and acute radiation syndrome, which is we call radiation sickness. It can also result in long-term health effects such as cancer or cardiovascular disease. Ultraviolet is the example of the radiation hazard, yang mana untuk UV ni kita tak boleh elak lah, memang ada lah, daripada matahari pun ada UV kan. So UV is we expose too much, so UV can damage us and skin cancer, skin burn or eye discomfort. Where is the exposure of this hazard? Outdoor job, welding work using high intensity lamp. Daripada lamp pun ada sinar UV juga. So how to reduce the hazard? We can use sunblock or UV protection glasses, blue color costume, baju yang color biru tu kan. So you can work safely around radiation or contamination with following a few simple precautions, such as use time, distance, or you can use shielding or containment to reduce exposure. Kalau biasanya untuk sinar X semua tu, kita wear dosimeter yang akan tunjuk level radiation yang kita dah serap ataupun badan kita dah serap. So dia akan tunjuk dalam dosimeter tu lah, dia ada, ataupun kita panggil TLD badge if issued benda tu. So avoid contact with the contamination, and then the most thing is we have to
wear the PPE or wear the protective clothes if contaminated, so we can remove lah benda tu bila terkena. So you boleh salin pakai baju lain, macam yang doktor apa sekarang yang COVID-19 tu kan, dia orang ada PPE tu kan. So lepas satu patient dia orang kena tukar lah pakai yang PPE tu sebab dia dah contaminate. Kita tak tahu apa yang terkena dekat baju tu. The last hazard is a psychological hazard, such as in workplace space, organization, culture, or stress. A psychological hazard is any hazard that affect the mental well-being or mental health of the workers by overwhelming individual coping mechanism and impacting the workers' ability to work in a healthy and safe manner. So, what is the example of psychological hazard ni, ataupun kita panggil psychosocial hazard? This includes stress, fatigue, bullying, aggression, harassment or burnout, which can be harmful to the health and of workers and compromise their well-being. There are 3 types of occupational stress: physical, mental and emotional. Okay, the causes of occupational stress, which is akan menyebabkan uncertainty and lack of control, lack of support from others including co-workers, akan menyebabkan conflict, and then high demand of working environment, long hour, high responsibility, commitment, itu akan menjadikan semua tu stress. And then very low demand, workstation bunyi bising, poor lighting, menyebabkan mata kita penat dan akhirnya kita jadi cepat penat, dan lagi pun kita akan jadi stress lah kan. So lack of space, extreme temperature, poor ergonomics, and then kadang-kadang chemical hazard pun menyumbang juga kepada stress, such as in fume, passive smoking. Kalau setengah orang tak tahan dengan benda tu, dia pun akan jadi macam tak suka tempat kerja tu, dia akan jadi mental illness lah juga bila dah stress ni. Continue of causes of occupational stress, such as organizational culture tu sendiri yang menyebabkan kita stress, repetitive task, low pay leading to overtime and piecework change, bayar rendah tapi nak kualiti kerja yang tinggi, ataupun terlalu banyak beban kerja. Okay, semua tu akan menyebabkan occupational stress. Okay, what do you react if you have the occupational stress tu? Maksudnya you dah banyak sangat assignment dalam masa yang sama, you ada test tapi assignment yang you dah kumpul-kumpul tak buat, so you lagi stress lah kan. Lepas tu tambah lagi ada test, so you akan jadi satu stress. Right. So apa you akan buat? So dia suggest 3 stages, which is immediate reaction. Buat cepat-cepat, jangan tangguh-tangguh lagi. Fight or flight, nak gaduh ataupun nak ambil step down. One step you take 5, although kalau you rasa you boleh pergi bercuti, you mampu nak, bila pergi bercuti you mampu nak relax, okay, boleh pergi bercuti. Ataupun how do you identify a psychological hazard, which is kalau orang yang betul-betul nak apply step by step ni, so you can reviewing organisation structure. Sebelum you nak fight tu kan, you kena review organisation structure, which is line of reporting, supervisory responsibility. Patut tak lecturer ni bagi assignment you banyak ni, ataupun sebab you buat kerja bertangguh, okay, ataupun sebab you duk main game tak sempat nak buat, okay, salah siapa? So you have to reviewing structure tu lah. So then you have to inspecting the condition of the physical workplace, equipment, such as macam equipment is working ke tak. Let's say lah lecturer tu bagi dalam bentuk software, kena run software kan. Software tu compatible ke tak dengan you punya komputer semua tu. So you kena inspect apa masalah keadaan sekeliling tu, and then assessing specific job requirement within the organisation, and then the next step is observing how work tasks are completed. So if the alarm stage cannot be maintained indefinitely, fail to run, so you can go to resistance stage. So at one time, resistance stage occur in which human develop survival strategies and a way of fighting the stress. So typically a short-term relief is preferable. And then kita boleh pergi juga kepada exhaustion stage. Stress response is healthy and motivator. Kita terima je lah benda tu sebagai motivator kepada kita. Kalau tak ada masalah, tak ada stress, you takkan siap kerja. Okay, so when expectation are not realistic, human become suffer. Tapi kalau you tak buat positive thinking macam tu, you all akan jadi stress. Betul kan? Okay, for psychological hazard is normally combination of the others hazard. Okay, bila kita tengok kat sini for welder, dia ada physical and chemical hazard. Dia akan burn bila dia buat spark tu kan, baju dia terkena, terbakar, mata dia, kulit dia, and then bila dia buat the danger of the work process starting a fire, lepas tu mata dia akan stress pada mata dia sebab bermain dengan spark of welding tu kan. So tu semua physical hazard yang dia lalui hari-hari lah semasa dia bekerja. Ditambah lagi dengan chemical hazard, which is ada fume given by the process which can damage the lung. So dia ada yang absorb fume masa dia welding tu, tapi tak semua 100% dia akan absorb fume tu. Setengahnya akan dia manusia tu sendiri ataupun welder tu sendiri akan absorb dan masuk dalam paru-paru dia, dan kemungkinan akan menyebabkan kanser ataupun dia punya kerosakan pada sistem pernafasan dia, yang akan kita tengok efek dia pada maybe 10 to 20 years next. So lepas dia kerja, dah hadapi dengan physical hazard, chemical hazard ni, balik bergaduh pula dengan girlfriend, ataupun girlfriend pula dah penat-penat, girlfriend pula ajak pergi makan malam semua kan. So ianya adalah satu stress, dia akan jadilah satu stress yang kita panggil occupational stress or psychological stress. Okay, same goes to the electronic assembly workers. Diorang pun akan facing with the physical hazard, chemical hazard, and then lastly go to psychological hazard. So apa yang kita boleh prevent untuk this hazard? So paling mudah kita nak control ialah physical hazard, right? So example of engineering control for physical hazard including providing safety equipment to employee that reduce their exposure to the physical safety hazard, and then we can reduce noises and vibration present in the workplace, place barriers between employee and physical hazards such as radiation or microwave, and then other step we can administrative control. We reduce risk by changing work processes and activities to make them more safe. Some example of administrative control for physical safety hazard including handling smaller quantities of dangerous and reactive chemicals, or spending less time in the area of danger or area of exposure, and then we can working away from noise when possible, and then providing employees with rest breaks away from the physical hazard, and then pada masa yang sama kita boleh training employees to recognize and avoid the physical hazard. So bila kita boleh prevent, boleh avoid physical hazard ni, so dia akan mengurangkan risiko kepada psychological hazard.
Okey, untuk lecture 12 ni saya tamatkan di sini. Okey, for lecture 13 kita akan continue kepada risk assessment. Okey? Thank you.